Hi, Magic is Real listeners. Thank you so much for being here for the Magic is Real podcast, where we talk about near death experiences and other spiritually transformative experiences. The focus is all things metaphysical and spiritual, anything from the healing arts to spiritually transformative experiences, anything mystical and magical. This is the place to be. I am Shannon. I am your host. I am a psychic medium. And I would ask that if you like this episode, and not just this episode, but if you like this show, which I hope you do, I'm very proud of it. I have amazing guests who I couldn't do this without. Please, would you just take a moment to hit the like button, share, subscribe, and leave comments, even if you just have time to drop like a little emoji. It really helps get the word out that this podcast exists. So, without further ado, because that was a lot of ado, this is my new friend Kevin Milsom coming live from the UK, where he is staying up late to do this show. So thank you, Kevin. I'm really excited because he is a
No
near death
problem.
experiencer, but more than that, just a fascinating, interesting person who is my kind of person. He's funny, he's charming, he's interesting. He's been having metaphysical experiences since he was a wee lad. And here to talk about all of it with me is Kevin Milsom.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Shannon. Thank you.
So happy to be here with you. Kevin,
My
I want to know about you. I want to understand your background, your past. You were aware of a spiritual, let's say, phenomenon. I would just say spirituality since a young age. But I'd love to know how you grew up. Was this encouraged in your family? Did you know what was happening? Was your family religious? Anything as it pertains to your spiritual journey?
really good question. A combination of bits of all things. I was raised Anglican or Church of England. I was the choir boy. Well, I went to Bible study, all of that stuff at a very young age. Um, and there was religion in the family. But there was also a kind of that I didn't know at the time, an unspoken worry about things such as spiritualism or talking to the dead, because there had been historical things going back in the family where that had been um, shunned. My mother saw her first ghost when she was 3 in 1927. But it just wasn't spoken about. It was probably feared. It was probably so when I came along, it wasn't a done thing in the 1960s really to be talking about it like we do nowadays. It was something spoken about behind closed doors, or not at all. And in my family, it was considered we didn't do this sort of thing. We didn't talk about that sort of thing. So I went through the usual thing, as I say, of going to the church school, being a choir boy, and then when I was 7, we were living. I was raised in a wonderful city called Bristol, which is in the west of England. Um, a city base with a lot of history, especially within sort of like pirates, like back in the day, like Bluebeard, all that kind of thing. Very, very naval city with, as I say, a lot of history. And we lived in a store. We had a store on 5 levels, which was, I think, the building came from the 1600s. And we had a store there opposite the school where I went and the church where I went, and everything was fine up till I was 7. And then I became ill, apparently with meningitis, which is very dangerous, especially back in 1970. And I was very ill, and I was about to get rushed into hospital. And then suddenly I got better. I just suddenly got better, which was a bit of a shock to the doctor, who had to cancel the ambulance. But then after that, Shannon, in my little bedroom, things got a bit weird. Things got a bit strange. I started to pick things up. I started to sense things, hear things, and it became. I mean, it's 7. It's a bit freaky deaky. It's a bit scary. You don't know what's going on. And of course, I told my mother about this, and it was, we don't talk about that sort of thing. You must have been having a dream. So I started having this dream where we had a big storeroom on the ground floor of the store where we had rats that were huge. I mean, huge rats. And so I was used to hearing, mine was the only bedroom on the first floor. And I was used to hearing scrabbling. I had mice in my bedroom, and we had rats going up and down, blah blah blah. But they were all in this storeroom. And my parents locked the door to the storeroom so that the rats couldn't get out, blah blah blah, which gave me a sense of security. But one night I started to hear these rats, and they were really loud, just like they were kicking a ball around, or they were, I don't know, wrestling or something. And I thought, well, that's strange. Didn't think any more of it. And then over the course of the next week, the noises got louder. And then they started whistling tunes.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, that's, that's a bit strange. I've got some very intelligent and very highly creative rats
Yeah, I
down
mean,
there.
how do you have rats don't have lips and they have really big teeth in the way. How are
Yeah,
they whistling?
this was my thought process, age 7. Um, all that is going through my head at 2 o'clock in the morning while I'm hearing these whistling noises. And then it went a stage further, Shannon, because I started to hear footsteps coming up the staircase, which stopped directly right outside my bedroom. And every night it would be like stomp, 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 whistle, 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 footstep, footstep, footsteps. And I'm thinking, these are some intelligent rats. My brain kind of went into overdrive on it, and I decided that the best form of defense would be and I'm going back to days before we had the quilts. So you would have sheets, because we didn't have central heating or anything like that. And we had proper winters back then. So I would have 3 sheets and then a couple of blankets, and then you'd have like an eider down mattressy thing on this quilty thing on top. So I had about 6 or 7 layers for the winter. And so I decided that if things escalated, I had an escape plan. I would go under the covers and I was going to stay there. And that was my battle plan. No point hiding in the cupboard. I could be found. And the whistling and the footsteps stopped one night outside my bedroom door, and the door began to rattle. Now, my parents are on the top floor. There's no one else in the house, no brothers, no sisters. Just these highly creative rats, highly skilled rats. And so I practiced going under the covers, and the next night, sure enough, the door rattled, the door opened, and I heard footsteps, heavy footsteps, coming across my floor. And then somebody sat on my bed, again, quite considerable weight, and I heard a male voice talking to me.
Nope.
The weird thing is, I know that the gentleman was talking in English, but I couldn't understand a single word he said. And I estimate for about an hour, it was just wah, 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 wah. And occasionally I get poked in the ribs under the sheets, the blankets. I'm petrified by this stage. And I'm thinking, I'm pinching myself, is this a dream? No, it's not a dream. And this went on night after night for some considerable time. Naturally, I told my mother, and I was told that that was a very exciting dream, known as a nightmare, and probably because I've had cheese or something like that. Me being I've always been very, I guess you'd call me a classic skeptic in the Greek sense or the Roman sense of the word, because I'm very analytical and very logical.
Me too.
So I feel that gives me my grounding. And I've always been fascinated by knowledge. I've always read encyclopedias from cover to cover. And I was at that age, I was heavily into astronomy, fascinated by facts and figures and the world, the universe, all this kind of stuff. But I could not explain this. Because this person would sit there on my bed for about an hour, or it felt like an hour, while I'm slowly suffocating under the covers. And then it would stop dead. There'd be no footsteps going out, no door closing. There would just be silence, which was worse than the talking. So, because now I'm thinking, is this a trick? Do I come out and go, phew, thank goodness, and see something like a headless horseman in my room? Do I stay under and risk being suffocated because oxygen supplies are running low by this stage? And I would wait for about half an hour until I literally couldn't breathe anymore. And then I would have to come out, get the wave of air, the oxygen hitting me, and the room would be empty, nobody in the room. This went on, I think, it's very hard. I'm going back a long time here, but it went on certainly for weeks. Same pattern every night. And then I can remember age 7 writing an invocation, what I now know like would be an invocation or a mantra. And this thing was about 10 pages long. And at that time, I had a photographic memory. And I memorized these 10 pages of A4 paper. And I guess it was like a prayer. I was asking for help because I didn't know what it was. I even thought we're going to the church over the road because we just done Sunday school, and we just done Satan in Sunday school, Lucifer. And I'm thinking, you've got a child's brain going, hang on a minute, am I being punished? Who's this coming? Because this isn't real. This isn't physical. I knew that much because, rats can't walk through doors. They can't whistle. And they certainly can't do impressions of old men. Who is this guy coming up from the cellar and the storeroom and sitting on my bed and talking to me in words that I just don't understand, but I know that he's speaking in English somehow. So that triggered my curiosity. I went to Bristol Library, which looks like something out of Harry Potter. I think I went down with like a big shopping basket, and I got every book that they had on ghosts, the paranormal, that I could find. And I took them out. I went down with my mother, who was aghast that I was reading that stuff. But I said, I need to know what this is. And she could see how nervous I was. And obviously sleep then was, I was practically an insomniac from that point, because you're just waiting for the whistling. You're waiting for the footsteps, the door opening, and somebody there. And events in my room, I would hear voices, I would see lights on the ceiling. Things were a bit strange. The only time before that things have been strange was when I was 3, 2 going on 3, and I told my mother about my past life and what I'd been doing. And she looked at me like I was made of cheese. And I described to her in intricate detail the layout of a Avro Lancaster bomber during World War II, where I was a tail gunner in the back. Now I'm 2 or 3. I don't know anything about this stuff, but it just came out one day. I was in the kitchen and it just came out, and I was telling her what it was like. And years later, my eldest daughter did the same to me when she was about 2. So I kind of get how my mom was. But aside from that, there'd been nothing spooky or anything like that. I wasn't interested in anything paranormal or horror stuff or anything like that at all. But I needed to know, Shannon, that this was a thing and that it wasn't just me experiencing this. And so I started reading some books in the 1970s, and I learned that this happened to other people. And that was the most important thing for me. Oh, I'm not a freak. This has happened to dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. Other people have seen this stuff, heard this stuff. My awareness kind of went off the scale from that point. And I was always a little bit then, I guess you'd say, into precognition, premonition. I'd know what songs were coming on the radio. If the phone rang, I'd know who it was. Small little things. But, I would hear what people were going to say before it came out of their mouth. Just small little things like that. And I studied that as well. I got more books at the library. This is way before the internet. Because, again, I wanted to know what it was. So I was basically exploring the foundations of parapsychology. But I wanted to know that I was, I guess, normal, that I wasn't, that this wasn't a freakish thing. This wasn't some form of mental illness or anything like that. This happened to other people, and this also happened to me. But from that point, which is now many, many decades ago, I guess I began that quest. I want to find out what that was, and I want to find out more about it because I'm curious. And that really was the seed, the foundation of everything that kind of came from that. But insomnia became worse in my teens. And although I remained interested in the paranormal, I decided during my teenage years, because there was a lot going on, not much of it good, sadly, during my teenage years. And I thought, I don't need spooky stuff as well. So I think I went into cryptozoology and a bit of ufology, Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, all that stuff, because I could cope with that. But I didn't want to go into the paranormal, which was more personal to me. And then when I got into my 20s, into my early 20s, I met up with an old school friend. And I thought, well, I'm 21 now, I'm grown up a bit. Maybe I should look into this. And I met up with him, and he was in the same frame of mind. And he said, what do you want to do about it? And I said, well, why don't we go and explore? And he said, what do you want to explore? I said, well, let's start with religion. So in Bristol, like I said, quite a sizable city, probably at that time, 500,000 people, something like that. So there's lots of places of worship. So we, one by one, I think alphabetically, we went to every single church, every single temple, place of worship in the city, and just outside, because we wanted to understand what's religion, what does it do, what answers does it have, and how do those apply to us? Can we learn from, is there, those kind of age-old philosophical questions? Is there one faith which has all the truth? What can we learn, etc., etc. So we did that, and some religions we found very interesting, and some religions we found not to our liking in the slightest. So we kind of made a list, and in the end we had two, and one was Quakerism and the other one was Spiritualism. Now, oddly enough, even though my mother, this is the kind of irony of it, even though my mother didn't want me talking to dead people or anything like that, a couple of times a year she would go to a local spiritualist church. And at that time in Bristol, we had about 20 of them. She liked to see a certain medium who would come down. And she would drag me along. I'd be about 9 or 10 by this time, 8, 9, 10. So a little bit older. And I'd just kind of sit there, not really knowing what was going on. I'd probably have a colouring book. And occasionally the medium would come to me, and I would freeze because I was a very, very shy, insecure kid. And I would, oh God. And they would give me stuff and say things. I go, yeah. And then not really take any notice. A couple of times people said things that were deep and meaningful, like one day you'll be doing what I'm doing here. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what that is. What is a psychic? What is a medium? I didn't know anything. I'm 9, 10. I'm playing with Lego and stuff. So, it wasn't for me at that time, but I had a basic understanding of spiritualism, probably since about 1971, 72, that sort of thing. So me and my friends started going to the local spiritualist church, and we embedded ourselves in there, and we learned from everybody who came down. We chatted to everybody. We wanted to know what made people tick. What do you believe in? Well, what's the meaning of life, if you like? And we kind of, it expanded our awareness, it expanded our understanding, because talking to people, reading books is fine, but talking to people on a one-to-one basis and hearing their personal experiences. And again, me hearing things that I'd been through as a child. Oh, you've seen a ghost as well. And then finding out that there were parallels, there were similarities, there were synchronicities. Again, on my quest to find out what's this stuff all about. And we went to a meeting one day at a new church, a completely different church, me and my friend Andrew. And we went to see a Scottish medium. And after the service, we were about to leave, and these 3 middle-aged ladies came up to us. And they kind of stared at us for a bit. They kind of blocked our path. And I'm thinking, hello, something's going to happen here. And they said, we've been sent to come over and talk to you. And I'm thinking, okay, because obviously I'm naturally skeptical, not cynical, but skeptical. So I'm thinking, what's the catch? What are you trying to sell us? How much is it? And I was checking the exits. And she said, is one of you called Andrew? And my friend said, yes, I am. And this lady, who was a very powerful medium and the spokesperson, said, my spirit team have sent us over to talk to you. We are opening a new closed circle. And I didn't know what a closed circle was, never heard of a closed circle. Would you like to come every week and sit with us? And we said, well, yes. And she looked at me and said, you can come too. So that was nice. So I didn't get left out. And then we had a week to talk about it. And I'm very skeptical. And I said, yeah, but we don't know who these people are. You know, they could be, we could wake up on a boat in the middle of the Indian Ocean, chained to the oars. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. These are complete strangers. And he said, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So we went there and I found out what a closed circle was. And it was basically a strong development group, spiritualist based, where the doors are locked and you have the same people who sit every week. So there's nobody coming in, unlike an open circle where people come wandering off the street. So you have the same people and you develop, and that group develops as one. And I was 22. We were young kids, really, youngsters. And Shannon, the first week I sat there, not expecting anything at all, it was like I was on a roller coaster at a theme park. We sat for an hour in the dark, no music. My mentor explained what was going to happen. We'd sit, and this might happen, that might happen, but spirit were going to come and work with us, our spirit team. And I said, okay. And I'd heard mediums talking about spirit teams. Never really applied that to myself. I just thought it was a thing that, you know, that wasn't for me. It wasn't my thing. And so after the first week, our first hour, I was pushed, I was pulled. It was like I was in a sports car, I was in a spacecraft, I was flying through space, I was upside down, I was this way up, I was inside out. It was just surreal. And she said at the end, did you enjoy that? And I said, well, that was something. And she said, would you like to come back? And I said, oh yeah, because now my curiosity is piqued. I want to know what this is all about, because that was something special. And it was my spirit team basically introducing themselves. And over the next couple of years, we just went every single week. We never missed a week. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And from my perspective, my spirit team came forward. My main guide came through. My Native American guide came through, introduced himself, took me over here, took me over there, showed me things. I was doing, at that point, I was working mostly on developing as a healer, as a spiritual healer. And I was also, for some reason, doing, I think you call it channeling, we would call it trance work, where basically I would get thoughts in my head, and it was like there was somebody deep within me, or I'm working I'm joined with somebody, and words come out of my mouth, and I don't know what I'm saying, but stuff comes out. And so that was being developed, but nothing, no mediumship of any kind, or psychic or anything like that. And then 2 years down the line, my mentor came to me one day and said, your spirit team have said to me that you're ready to stand up and go to a spiritist church and take your first service as a medium. And I said, but I've never done anything like that. Everybody else in the circle had, but I was the only one who hadn't. And she said, well, this is the time to trust spirit, Kevin. And I did, and I trusted her immensely. I said, okay. And I had a week to prepare for it. I did my first service, and then that kind of set the scene for the next decade or two, where I worked as a medium in churches, and I developed that craft very slowly, but was learning every time that I went out. And I went pretty much over most of England and Wales, doing church services. And a few years later, I met my wife, and then we went out together doing that. And I found it very, very fascinating. And then after that, um, after a few years, it felt like I wanted to give something back. So I started to teach myself, and I had a small group of people, and I became a kind of mentor to them, because I thought, well, that's the way to do it. And that's what my mentor had always said: when you get to a stage of confidence, or where you feel ready, pass it on. Teach other people to do what I taught you to do. So we had that pattern for some time, and I found it very fascinating. I wouldn't say mediumship is my strongest gift. I probably would say that healing is probably, for me personally, a stronger gift. But I'm sure you can relate, when mediumship hits, when it works, and when it works,
Hmm.
it's such a privilege
Yeah.
to give somebody hope, joy that their loved ones are still talking to them, still around them, that love never dies. And that was why I did it and kept doing it for, as I say, probably my last service was 2017, just before my NDE. Um, and I was quite busy in the 2010s, again, life, family, and I kind of moved away from the spiritualism aspect, because life just took over, and there were things. I had issues and with my mother and her health and my health, and just raising kids. I home educated our two children, so all that was going on, um, and I was caring for my mother at the same time for the final few years of her life. So I didn't really have the time to put into, because there's a lot of traveling with the spiritualism, with the being a medium. So I toned it right down, Shannon. And as I said, I'd not done a service in ages, and I did one in 2017. And I turned to my wife and I said, no, this isn't for me anymore. I feel like there's something else. I feel I've kind of come to the end of that. I don't say I want to do mediumship again, but I don't want to do it in a church setting. Um, and it was just something that I felt. I felt like there was something new. And that was in 2017. And then in 2018, the wheels fell off the wagon because I became ill, and that's when I had the near-death experience, which kind of took me into a whole new phase of life.
Thank you. I'm fascinated and so riveted by what you've already shared. Thank you. And so much I
You're so
relate
welcome.
with. And it's exciting. It's exciting coming into our gifts. It's exciting seeing
Mm,
that there's evidence of something more. And you just
absolutely.
reminded me that I've been meaning to go to check out a spiritual church, and I'm going to do that as soon as we're off this call because I have wanted to do that for some time and I just always forget about it. But also, something you just said that I just wanted to touch on before we go into the NDE, which I'm excited to hear
Sure.
about, is how you said being of service with mediumship is the greatest
Mm,
honor. I love
yes.
it. You said
Yeah.
when it works, and that's something that I have been
Mm,
discussing a lot. I was just
mm,
interviewed on a podcast last night,
okay. Oh,
and
lovely. Wow.
and I was explaining this because I did a reading on the show, and this woman was not taking any of the information, and I thought, well, here we are on a
Here we go.
podcast, and it's a flop, and nothing's happening, and
Here we go again.
I'm not and this happens sometimes, and then I
Oh,
spent, like,
yes.
a good
Yes, it does.
majority of the podcast talking about how the thing is, it's not a perfect science, and when spirit wants to share, I told them how on an airplane, I gave a 5-hour reading because this woman in spirit was so clear, and I was giving messages for her daughter, and it was, like, so amazing that it blew my
Mm,
mind. I said, "Then sometimes you
yes.
sit down and, like,
Oh,
it's not that you don't know if you're connecting or
it's
not,
frustrating. Yeah.
and it's frustrating." And then at the end, the woman came back and said, "Shannon," and I just realized this
Yeah.
is my mom's grandfather. I all the pieces fit, and I just wasn't getting it. But even then, it was like I wasn't
I know.
I
Yeah.
don't sometimes
Oh,
I'm like, "Is this me? Is it them? Is spirit not have anything to say?"
I love
Is
that though.
so
I love
talk
that.
to me about that, yeah.
No, I love that. And it's such a joy to hear you say that because
Me
often, and
too.
it's partly why I came away from the spiritualist churches, you hear the opposite. You hear well, I'm going to give you a lady called Glenda. And you say, but I don't know anybody called Glenda. And I say, I'm sorry, I'm never wrong. And
Right.
that, yeah, yeah. So you get the other end of that. And I love people who, like you just said, say, sometimes it ain't going to happen. Or
Yeah,
sometimes, and I always see it as a triangle, Shannon. I always see spirit, the person who is being read, and us, the medium.
I say the exact same thing.
We know the spirit are not going to be wrong,
Mhm.
but we know that we have brains and they fluctuate and they do this and they do that. We have good days, we have bad days. It flows, it doesn't flow. We can be wrong. We can get it wrong. I've got it wrong more times than I care to remember.
Me
And
too.
sometimes, yeah, maybe I'll go into too much detail. And then my
Yes.
team will go, tone it down. Just keep it simple. Remember, simple. Because I'll start going off on one because I'll see something and then I will get it completely wrong. But I've always been the kind of person, if I got it wrong, I'll put my hand up and say, sorry,
Me too.
I messed that up completely. And that's my bad. Let's go back and see if we can do it again. I'll have a drink of water. I'll pace something down a bit and we'll see if we can go back in again. And if we can, we can. If we can't, we can. But I love the honesty of mediums. And I think we've got to be honest. But most of all, we have to be honest with ourselves. There has to be that honesty there. I've got somebody here, and I'm sure you feel the same way. You know when it's right. You can
Yeah.
feel it. You can feel the physical energy. You
Mhm.
can feel the power change. My room where I do all of my stuff in here goes icy cold. If I'm doing
Yeah.
mediumship now online, I'll maybe be doing the old tarot cards. And I always say now, okay, I don't class myself as a medium. I class myself as, I don't know, I just want to help. So I've been reading tarot cards since I was 16, 1979. Um, and they continue to fascinate me. But for me, if I'm doing that, or if I'm taking a meditation class, or if I'm meditating myself, or if I'm doing mediumship, I'm opening myself up. And if I'm opening myself up to spirit, they can work through me however they want. I don't care. It's not. I'm just a mouthpiece.
Yep.
They're far more wise than I'll ever be. So and the planning that must go into these things must be phenomenal. But we are just the speakers. We are the mouthpiece. So I know that I can get that wrong. I know that I can misinterpret.
Mhm.
All of those things. But when we get it right, it feels different.
Yeah.
It'll go cold up to my knees. I might get objects moving in the room. I might hear voices or something like that. Um, and then I go, and it feels like I'm being supported. It feels
Mhm.
like I'm floating. I'm lighter in being. But you know when you're right. But
Yeah.
it's that honesty, which I think is so very, and I'm really pleased to hear you say that because it just shows to me just grounding. And I think if you're
Yeah.
grounded, you're logical, you're analytical, but you're dealing with okay, what's true, what's not, what's true, what's not. We're sifting through the information, but the intention is always there to help, to be of service, to give light.
Mhm.
There has to be that there because otherwise you're doing it for the money or the ego or the whatever. And I've never been into either of those things, but it has to be to give service to other people. But if I'm doing tarot now, sometimes if I'm at a spiritual fair or if I'm doing them on Facebook or Messenger, I will do the tarot, and then sometimes I'll feel something maybe here on this side, and I'll say, "Oh, I've got somebody here," and then I'll give a little bit of mediumship if it comes. If it doesn't, it
Yeah.
doesn't. If it does, it does. But it's just the opening up, isn't it? And working and just working for spirit. And it's the same with spiritual healing when I work in healing or meditation or whatever. It's the or sound therapy even. It's it's just the being of service, and what comes out comes out. And I don't think we can judge that sometimes. I don't think it's our, oh well, today I'm going to do a bit of this and that's going to come out. And I'm just pleased when something does, and
Oh,
the
me
person
too.
says, oh, that means the world to me. And that is gold dust.
Yes.
It's precious. It's so precious. And aren't we lucky to be able to do that? And my mantra has always been, and I used to say is if I was traveling to a spiritual church, my wife would say, "How are you feeling at the moment?" And I would say, "Right, well, if I help one person today, then it's been worth the fuel. It's been worth the journey. It's been worth going. If one person comes out of that church and they go, oh, that's really helped me. Yeah. What more can we
Exactly.
do? And if that's two or three or four, then even better. But yeah, just to be of service, I think is everything.
Oh, me too. And I love it. And then there are times where I go, am I even a medium? Because
Oh,
this
tell me about that.
that makes me feel better to hear you say that. And my friend
I'm a
Nikki, who,
freak.
yeah, I teach classes with my friend Nikki Blair, who's an indigenous medium, and
Go on.
she's incredible. And then she will call me and say, I had two in a row where I had to refund the person because I just couldn't get anything. And we sit there
Okay.
going over what could have gone wrong. Was it the energy? Was it my hormones? Was it the person? And
Yes. Yes.
I try to just say, Spirit, I trust you to deliver what needs to be delivered. And if nothing, I have to let my
Absolutely.
ego go, which is hard. And the funny thing was, right before I went into this podcast, I kept hearing, I felt spirit, right? I felt the tingling.
Okay.
And I said,
Yeah.
who is it? And I heard Rick. And then I heard Ranger Rick. And I don't know what that means. But so I said, all
Yeah.
right, I'll put you on hold. So when I went into the podcast to do a reading, I said, I'm hearing Rick. Nobody takes it. And I'm like, okay, I feel so sure about this. Start
Mm,
going into the description. Again, everything is a no, no, no. I'm feeling it's one woman, and she's so sweet, but she's like, I don't know. And then I'm like, he's a woodworker. He smokes cigarettes. He's apologizing for not being a good parent. She's like, maybe that's my dad's dad, kind of, but not really. And then,
mm.
right as I said, so I'm doing this going, I think I'm making this up. I think I've just made this up. I'm imagining it. I'm not really even
I
sure if I'm
get it.
feeling
I
anything.
get it.
I'm like, did I just invent this guy? Maybe I did.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
at the end, when she said, oh my God, I'm so dumb. She's like, first of all, the woodworking, the smoking, that's my mom's dad. And then she says, and I just remembered and I kept saying there's someone named Rick, but he's saying he's called Dick, or like it's like Rick or Dick. And here I am still thinking maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong.
Mm,
I can't
yeah.
tell. And finally she said, "Oh my God, this is my mom's ex-boyfriend who took his own life, and she refers to him as Rick the Dick." And I was like, "There we go." But it took like
There
an
we go.
hour to get there. Not and I'm
Dreamwork.
not she
Yes.
just couldn't remember. And so a lot of times the person says no, 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 and you start
Oh,
to get
actually,
in your
yes. I
head,
learned that the hard way. And
and then
I've done the same.
yeah, you
I've
lose
gone to a
it.
spiritual church and been given, somebody called Mary. And I go, Mary? I don't have any friends called Mary. Um, I've sworn blind. And then I go home and I think, oh, mother, sorry. No,
That is so
it
funny.
happens. It
And
just happens.
yeah, like this whole time I've been sitting with you, I'm hearing the name like Priscilla, but then they were saying, no, it's Lucille. And it was like a Cille name. So I'm just running that by you now. But does that mean anything to you? Priscilla or Luce? It's like at the Cille. Let's just leave it if it doesn't.
A friend of mine was talking about somebody called Priscilla today, actually,
Oh,
um,
that
in in California.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I might be picking that up psychically, but
Might be picking that up. Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
heard Priscilla, Priscilla, Priscilla. So it may be relevant and something may come up around that.
One of
I'm
my
just,
favorite movies is Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
oh, mine too. Do you know when we had MySpace and you'd put your top 5 favorite
Oh my
movies?
God, go back again. Yes, go
I
back
would
in
put
time.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. That's one of my
Yes,
favorite movies.
it is.
And Central Station, which is a Brazilian film that is beautiful.
Oh, okay.
So check that out when you can. It's a sob. It's a sob. It won, I think, Academy Award that year, but it's a
Oh,
beautiful
wow. Oh, I've
Brazilian
never heard
film
of that.
from like
Oh,
20
okay.
years ago. Independent film, gorgeous. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I love hearing this because it makes me feel better when I know that even the best mediums and professional mediums struggle with the same thing of I can't control. There are times where
Yes,
I'm like, I don't think anything came through. I have no, it doesn't feel like it did. And then they come back and say, everything did resonate. I just didn't know. And what had happened is the no's were spinning me out of into my head. And then I was starting to doubt. And the more I doubted, the more I came
yes,
out of it. Sometimes maybe I'm just not hitting that day, but I find more often than not, it's they're not remembering it, or I'm
yeah,
misinterpreting it, or my
yeah.
own thoughts and my own thoughts do
I
come
was
in.
just going to say that exactly. The more we can quieten the mind, um, is I can remember years ago, I'd not been going long, and I was in the church in Bristol, and I went to a family, a youngish family, and I was on the platform and I'm staring at them, and I saw a fried egg, and I thought, I'm not giving you a fried egg. There's no way. That's just nonsense. That's my brain. Oh God,
Mhm.
I'm starting to panic now. It's showing me I don't know what to say. I've clearly got nobody here. They've all left me. They've all gone down the bar. They've all left me here. And now my brain's going, it's panicking and shouting out fried egg. And
Yes.
so clearly, the wheels have come off here. Um, where's the exit? Thank you, good night. Taxi, gone. Out of here. Out of here. Change your name. Um,
Change your name.
yeah, change your name, emigrate. And it would not go away. It kept and my spirit team, my Native Americans, Friday, 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 and it's getting annoying now because nothing else is coming. Oh God! And I said, I'm sorry. I said, this might sound a bit strange, but I've got to say to you, Friday, and the whole family fell apart into tears. And
Oh,
I'm thinking, okay, and I think at that point I learned a lesson. It's not for me to again, I am the mouthpiece. I don't need to be in this going, well, I'm not sure we should say that, guys, because I am simply the mouth at the end of the tube.
yeah.
And my job is to go, oh, you want me to say fried egg? Fried egg. But I didn't. I hesitated, and they're starting to look at me, and I said fried egg, and they fell apart. And I thought, okay. And afterwards, they came up to me and they said, that was the code word from our father. He said, when I pass, I'm going to come back
What?
and I'm going to say fried egg.
How, I mean, how there's no way that we're not mediums, all of us, because
But how many times have you,
eh,
like me, maybe, oh, I'm not saying that, and I haven't said it. And then
uh-huh.
afterwards,
Ugh,
oh, I wish I'd said that. Oh, that
I
would have made such a
know.
difference. Faith, isn't it?
It
It is
is.
faith. But
I had
we are just a mouthpiece. Sorry.
It
Cool.
is. No, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're the guest.
No, 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 you
But
didn't. It's fine.
I did my first platform reading in person last year, and I was
Oh,
nervous
wow.
because I thought I was
Oh, tell
invited
me
to do
about it.
this for this med spa and all the ladies after their work, because I had given a reading to the woman at the desk one day as I walked in there, and then she told her boss, and her boss said, "Can you come and do this for
That's
us?"
how it goes.
And it was yeah, so I
That's
was
how it
so
goes.
nervous. I'm like, "What if I get up there in front of whatever, 8 to 10 women and nothing happens?" I walked through the front door and I immediately felt chills, so I thought, "Okay, okay." Then
Nice.
I said,
Good
"Can I go
sign.
meditate in the other room?" And I went in there and I saw a pig, and I texted my friend Shannon Rock, who is the medium, and she's an incredible medium in Los Angeles, and I said, "I'm seeing a pig though, and I feel I don't know if I want to say this." She said, "Shannon, trust it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I got up in front of the group and I said, "Okay, the first thing I'm seeing is a pig that's sleeping in a dog bed and she's running around with a bunch of dogs and thinks she's a dog." And the woman
Nice.
said, "That's my pig Daisy. That was my
There you
pet."
go.
And she did sleep in the dog bed. I was like, that's when I knew I was in and it was going to go great. And it turned out to be the best reading of my life.
Isn't isn't that a wonderful feeling?
The
Isn't that a
best.
wonderful sensation when you're in that groove?
It was
Uh,
incredible
yeah.
down to a woman who I said, like, there's someone that took their life. And
Hmm.
she's like, "Yeah, my partner did." And I'm just gonna make up a name for anonymity. I said, and he's giving me the name, like, um, Brady or something. That's not what it was. But
Mhm.
and she burst into tears and said the
Mm,
reason this happened was that I caught him on some websites that he shouldn't have been on
mm.
using that name. It wasn't
Oh,
even Brady. It was something so specific that it isn't a common name. Like it was not
mm,
a common name. And she said that was his sort of handle. And when I confronted him, that's what led to him spiraling. And I was like, how would I ever in a million years have gotten that name
mm,
specifically? And so then you just know, okay, this is happening. It's just that
mm.
sometimes it's not happening and we don't have control over how
I
that goes.
Yeah, it's for me, it's the consistency.
Yes.
I know it can happen with me, and I know that on a good day, it's going to go great.
Yep.
But the best mediums, there are two wonderful mediums that I know in this country. One of whom does a lot of work in the States, called Gordon Smith,
Oh,
and
yeah, I love Gordon Smith. I'm on
he
his
is incredible.
yeah.
I've met Gordon many times.
Mm.
He is hysterically funny,
Yes.
hysterically funny. But his mediumship is unbelievable.
I know.
But for me, and of course, you go to see this, or you know, and you think, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Because this guy nails it, nails it, nails it,
Yes.
nails it. And you know, I'd be running around in circles going, "Oh, I think I've got something," and
Me too.
he's already done 20.
Me
Yeah,
too.
you know, but it's the consistency. It's like unbelievable how often he can hit that target. He can hit that bullseye.
I
Um,
know.
it's phenomenal. Because I generally think the mediumship is rare. I think it's a lot
Yeah.
rarer than people realize. I do believe everyone is intuitive, stroke psychic to a degree. I think we've got aspects of precognition, premonition, all those kind of things. Again, to varying degrees. With some people very strong, with some people maybe not so. But everybody has a spark of something. But when you come to mediumship and physical mediumship, I think we're literally talking 1 in 100 million. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really do think it's that rare a gift to get to. So certainly to get to that level where I'm going to give you a message for 30 minutes and I'm going to give you 45 pieces of information, and every one of them is bang on the ball.
Everyone is spot on.
Every one of them, you go, how did you know that? And you know, it's just unbelievable. I like the guy on YouTube as well. I can't remember his name now. Um, he goes around to celebrities' houses. I can
Oh,
see his face.
Tyler Henry.
Yes, yes.
He's
I,
one of the best in the
I,
world.
I'm fascinated by him.
Yeah,
I would love to see him live.
me too. He's one of the
Yeah,
best of the best of the best.
he
And
does seem to have that same ability to be consistent.
yeah, I
Uh,
think they're natural mediums that have had
yes,
that
very, yes,
since
yes,
birth. And then
yes.
there are those of us who might have to work at it a little.
Who were kind of, yeah,
We have to
yeah.
hone it a bit.
We we are swimming against the tide often, but
Mhm.
and I think that is persistence, and that is, you know, you do need a lot of faith for that. Um, my faith is rock solid because of multiple experiences that I've had in life. Um, so I firmly believe in, you know, my spirit team, and everything else, and I know that on a good day I can do
Yeah.
I, I can get bits that people will go, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. How did you know that?
Yep.
Or I can do it with the tarot cards even. But I think for me, because I set the bar high in anything I do in life, I see Gordon Smith and I think I want to be that guy.
Me
Because you
too.
do, you know, I used to play a lot of sports, and you know, I would want to be back in those days. I would want to be the best player on the pitch, or I would want to learn how to be the best player on the pitch. I would want to be better, and if I got beat, I would want to know, you know, how did I get beat? Next time, I'm going to come back and I'm going to beat you. You know, blah blah blah. So, because to me, it's just about growth and development, and that to me, from a kid, has been the main thing. You know, I want to grow to be the best person I can, and I want to develop to be the best person I can. And you know, none of us are angels, none of us are perfect, none of that. We've all got our faults and our foibles and everything else. But for me, the purpose of life, if you like, the meaning of life, is just to grow. It's to grow and expand and become more aware, to be more conscious, to be this, to be more of that, and to just become better versions of ourselves than from when we came down, because I can't think of any other reason why we would be here. If life isn't a school or a college or a university, then I'm not sure what it is. But it is that persevering and pushing through. And mediumship is frustrating, but I think the
Yeah,
rewards of it are phenomenal,
I
um,
agree.
beyond this world.
It's
And
the th yeah.
it's a privilege.
It is, and, I also just felt spirit with me when you were talking, but there are readings I've given where I'm like, "That was better than any Long Island medium reading I've ever heard," and it came
Yeah.
through me somehow, and I don't give myself the
Yes.
credit as much as, like, that all
No.
came
That's
together, like, it all came
yeah.
together perfectly, and sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, I am
Oh,
as
I'm
good as the Long Island
contemplating that for
medium."
yeah. No, I'm contemplating that for years down the line.
Yes.
I mean, even now, I can go back 15 years or 20 years more actually, to services that I've done where I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
The moon was in the right phase, Mercury
Yep.
was over there, something happened that bang. And even people who'd seen me before going, "What the hell's happened to you?" Because last time you weren't that good.
Yeah,
I don't know, but next week's going to be great. And then because you go out next week and
and then
you
and then it's a flop the
it,
next
it
time.
all goes wrong, and you think, okay, okay, lesson learned. But I feel very very honored, but at the same time, again, I think it's the wanting to know, that curiosity. I want to know the mechanics of mediumship. I know. I tried to perfect the tarot cards over 40 years, and I can kind of do it. I do the same with, I work in numerology as well. And I've tried it for the last 35 years, 36 years. And again, I've tried to find the definitive way of doing that, where every time I go out and do one, it's bang, bang, it's a Gordon Smith. It's bullseye,
Yep,
bullseye, 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 bullseye. Um, but I think if I can get maybe 80%, I mean, that to me is a heck of a day. That's a heck of a good
same.
night. Um, but I love the fact that we know that we can mess it up. We know that we can get it wrong.
100%.
But people don't understand that. People think that we press something here and we go, okay, I can now talk to the dead. That makes coffee. This one, I can talk to the dead. Hang on, I'll just plug myself into the mains. Yes, I can talk to anyone. Who would you like to talk to? And it works like that. And when it doesn't work like that, they go, well, yeah, but I thought it did because I saw this medium on television and I saw that. And I've seen that movie where they just come out, and I saw ghosts where Whoopi Goldberg was just coming out of her mouth. So, why isn't that happening with you? Because people don't understand how mediumship works. There's some
Oh,
mediums that
yeah.
how their mediumship works. There's a real general ignorance about it. Do they think that we suddenly got mystical powers? And I guess to some degree they are mystical or holistic or whatever you want to call them, spiritual. But they're not infallible because we've got these brains when we've got our nervous system and we've got this and we've got that and stress and worry and all the rest.
Yeah.
So I think if we can have a good day now and again, I
That
would
is
settle for
so
that.
realistic. I'm so glad you shared that,
It
and
has to
we'll
be.
we'll go into
Yeah.
the NDE, but I'll close that by saying that I had a reading with a medium who has her own TV show,
Okay.
and she said, and I won't name her name, but I will say that, she's not the Long Island medium, but she's doing very well for herself, and I
Okay.
said, and the whole reading, she really didn't get anything from me, but she said, "Do you know that you're a medium?" And I said,
Mhm.
"Yeah." And she said, "You're a very powerful medium." And I said, "I know, but I want to be as good as you." And she said, "You are as good as me, and don't compare." But then I said, "Well, there was
No.
this episode you did where there was this guy and
Yeah.
the spirit was coming through, and you were saying has to do with some kind of an organ transplant and bile." And he was like,
Mhm.
"Yes." I think it was he had given a kidney to this,
Okay.
or vice versa, whatever it was. Somebody had given the spirit was somebody that had, received a kidney from this person or something, and she
Yeah.
got and I said, "It was so incredible." She said, "Shannon, do you know how much editing went into that?" She said, "It didn't
Mm.
just come to me like that." She said, "It took 10
Mm.
minutes of, well, does this make sense? Does that make sense?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the real process. And when you watch the TV shows, because you only have a half an hour or 45
Of
minutes,
course. of
They have
course.
to edit out all the parts where you're going, "Okay, wait, so is it
Um,
bile? Is it the kidney? Is it the liver?" And she's like,
um,
it wouldn't be an interesting episode if they actually watched how we work. It's not that easy."
it's not, and the patience it requires
Yeah.
is phenomenal. Um, I teach meditation now, I've, which was a direct source of the NDE, of the after effects of the NDE. And we've been going for, well, we started up during lockdown online, and now we do a public one here, which is we're going for 2 or 3 years. But the amount of people who, especially around New Year's Day, when the New Year's resolutions are kicking in, and I always put out an advert on like New Year's Day or just after or just before. Start your new year with meditation. And it's all free. I don't charge for any of it, but I just like helping people in the community. Um, and I get so many, because it goes out to thousands of people. And I get hundreds of emails. I was thinking, I was only thinking the other day of doing the meditation. Yeah, I'll definitely be there. I'll definitely be there. And then I open up and I'll maybe get one or
Mhm.
two out of 800. Because it's like they say, it's was it 70% of gym memberships are never used
Yeah.
because people have the intention. But they don't realize the work that goes into developing as a medium, as a healer,
Oh, yeah.
or to just to better the self, to further the self. Um, there's a lot of work here. You don't turn up to the gym on the first day and pick up a dumbbell and go, "Oh, that's it. I am now Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm going to go in for the Mr. Universe contest." It takes weeks, months, years of steady, balanced training. I used to live in a gym when I was younger. The first time I went in, I had to go on everything for 4 hours, go walk for 2 weeks, and learned a valuable lesson. You can't do everything at once. It has to be slow and gradual. But I don't think people realize the patience required and the work put in, the dedication, the meditation that we need to do, the faith and trust that we have to have in ourselves. Um, all that. There's so much that goes into it, but it takes time. It's not there. There's no shortcut. I've been in spiritualism 55 years now, something like that. There isn't a shortcut. I'd have found it by now. I'm sure I'd have found it.
Oh, yeah.
There isn't. But people want that. They want that shortcut, whether it's going to the gym or this or that or the other. What's the cheat code? There isn't one. What's the shortcut? There's got to be a shortcut. No, there isn't a shortcut. If you want to develop as a medium, as a healer, as a psychic, you need to spend time on yourself. You need to develop the self. Oh, well, how do I do that? Do I buy a book? No, well, you can buy a book, but mostly you'll need to find yourself without sounding too 1960s.
Mhm.
You need to learn to balance yourself, to turn this off, quieten that down, learn to do this way, learn how spirit communicate, the special ways, and everyone is different and individualistic. So none of us develop the same way because we've all got our own ways and quirks. Um, but it took time. I mean, it took me to just over 2 years from when I first started sitting to when I did my first service. And apparently, I was very, very quick in doing that. Um, I I I had a fast curve, um, but my mentor, she studied for 20 years.
Mm.
Every week. I wasn't allowed to do anything for 11 years. Wasn't allowed to speak, just had to sit in a chair in the group. Wasn't allowed to do anything for 11 years. It's almost like Shaolin. It's all like a Shaolin
Yeah.
movie where,
Yeah.
but it takes that level of dedication. I think for the bulk of us, to do that. And even Gordon Smith, I've got Gordon Smith's books here. And he talks about how he had to sit in groups, how he had to develop, how he had to go week in, week out, week in, week out, without fail. And then he had to learn to trust his instincts and learn to trust what he was being given. And all of that is a massive journey. It's not, you can't get that from reading the book, An Idiot's Guide to Being a Medium, and you read that and go, okay, I've talked to dead people now. It doesn't work like that. It'd be great if it did, but there is no shortcut. So Um, yeah, it's a shame sometimes. I think that people don't. They come for reading and they don't really understand what they're going to get. They don't
Yeah.
understand how it works, and we have to explain. And they go, "Well, surely it doesn't work like that. Don't you just, blah blah blah, like in the movies? No, it doesn't work that way." But
No, even the Long Island Medium in her book, Teresa Caputo, which is what
I,
gave me the
yes,
courage to do it, and Suzanne
wow,
Giesman,
okay,
which she said, I didn't know what I was doing. She said, I took classes
no, I
and
didn't.
workshops. I sat in circle. And
Mm.
Teresa said, when my mentor said, you're ready to start charging, she said, I'm not ready. I don't feel ready. I don't think I felt ready ever. I felt so nervous charging for my services. And
I've
I was
always
like,
took
am
that.
I
Yeah,
really gonna be able to do? And it's worked out. But even she said, this is something that took practice and years until I could trust myself. So it
it,
isn't
yeah,
magic.
it is.
It's cultivation and meditating every single day for me. I did
Mm.
readings for 2 years straight for free, and even then, I was like, "Am I ready? Am I ready yet?" And you just have
I've
to
been
take a
doing.
leap.
Well, that's it. And my problem has always been the commercialization of it. So
Yeah,
I have done free readings for 45 years.
yeah,
Um, but then you find you're being taken advantage of.
yeah,
And I'm not in it for the money. If I was in it for the money, I'd starve very, 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 very
yeah.
quickly. But I think there has to be some. I do spiritual fairs now, and I would charge a small amount.
Mhm.
But people seem. I never thought people would want me to pay. I think that's lack of confidence in me. Who's going to pay? Who's going to pay me money for tarot
Yeah,
cards, for reading tarot cards? And then I find out how much other people charge. And I go, no, surely nobody, no one's going to pay that much. I wouldn't pay that,
yeah,
but they do.
they do.
And
The reading
so,
I had was $400 with the medium that
oh
it was, and
my
I
days!
found out
Oh,
this is a
Shannon.
celebrity medium, and I didn't realize that because I was on the waiting list. And then I found out the
Oh,
day of, I didn't realize it was only a half an hour session. And she didn't get anything, but she did say,
$8
"You're gonna."
$8 an hour.
She did say, "But you're gonna be a powerful medium, and you're as good," and
Okay.
that, and even just chatting with her for a while, I was like, "Well, it was cool to meet her," and so, but yeah, so now what I find interesting is that I almost all of, I don't wanna say, but a majority, I would say, of the near-death experiencers I've interviewed also had these experiences before they even had the near-death experience. I'm not saying all.
No.
Um,
So,
so I wanna know, and I'd love to hear, whatever version you feel like telling, but, um,
yes.
I'm so curious about that because it seems like, is that just a coincidence, or was this part of this soul plan that it was like, "I am going to come in aware, but then the universe is gonna blow it wide open because I need to expand for some whatever reason."
Yeah. That's a really interesting one because I said at the time, I'd had a break from the spiritualism. I wasn't really in the mood for it. We'd had a couple of
Huh.
incidents at different churches where the politics and ego had come in, and for various reasons. And me and the wife had said, that's not why we're here. We're just here to try and help people.
Yeah.
We're not interested in anything else. So we came away, and I was doing my own thing. And I think I had a midlife crisis, and I can't afford a Harley Davidson. So I got to 55, and I felt like I wanted to do something for the community. Um, and I thought, right, what should I have done when I was younger? And what I should have done younger was I should have been more involved in sport because I had natural ability in multiple sports, and I could have picked literally any one of them and probably take it to a semi-professional or professional level. And one of those was soccer or football, as we call it. And I never done anything with it. And once you go past 30, that's it, you're toast. And I thought, I know, well, I can't play football at 55 because I'm old, although I was remarkably fit at the time. I'll become a soccer coach. There's a lot of schools in the area, a lot of um, youngsters in the area who want to learn. I'll go to the Football Association, the main body in Great Britain, and I'll become a soccer coach. And I'll teach 7 to 11-year-olds. great thinking. So I signed up for the course, and I chose one of the hottest summers on record. And I then made another mistake of trying to keep up with 17-year-olds at 55, neither of which were good ideals. And I'd been diabetic since 2008. So I've been coping with and living with diabetes since that time. This is 2018 now. And I came back one day from the training sessions, and my wife said, "You've got a hole in your foot." And I said, "Have I? Can't feel anything because of neuropathy." And there was a tiny little hole like that, just in the sole of my foot. And so I said, "Well, we better keep an eye on that." Okay. And it started to grow. And then it started to go to look a bit odd. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor missed it completely and said, "Oh, there's a lot of that around at the moment. It's probably a verruca," and
Oh
ignored
my
it. So I'm starting to feel not very well. I finished my training, but the hole in my foot is getting bigger, and it's now gone black.
God.
And
Is
now
this necrosis that's happening?
there's black stuff coming out of my foot,
Ugh.
and it's starting to smell. I go back to the doctor. "Hello, there's a hole in my foot, black stuff's coming out, I'm starting to smell like a used toilet." And again, for whatever reason, they misdiagnosed it. They put seaweed in it for some reason. I've no idea why, but they put seaweed in it and said that will do it. And then I can't remember much after that, because over the course of next week, I became very, very ill. I lost maybe 20 pounds in weight. I slept a lot for maybe 20 hours a day, 22 hours a day. I was hardly eating. And I was hallucinating. It was just not good. And the doctor said, well, actually, we didn't go to the doctor. We just rang the hospital. We thought, there's no point going back. Have an aspirin. So drove to a doctor, in a local hospital in Gloucester. And they took one look at me and said, "You are incredibly ill." Apparently, I fainted at that point. I don't remember doing that, but they did tell me afterwards that I fainted. Yeah, and all I can remember is wondering why I was in a wheelchair, being wheeled back out to the car. And then my wife did a kind of a Starsky and Hutch and sped to the nearest hospital, because they basically said, "If you stay with us, you'll be dead inside 5 hours.
Yeah.
You need to go to a better hospital with more facilities," about 5 miles away. So my wife, all the way. I don't remember much after that. I'd never been in, I'd never stayed in a hospital, never had calls to, never broken a bone. As I said, been ridiculously fit. I went in, it's all a bit surreal, but I remember being in front of an X-ray machine and them saying, "Uh-oh," and I thought, well, that's not good. And they took an X-ray of my foot. And what basically had happened is, because they packed the seaweed in,
Oh my God.
what was coming out of my foot was blood poison or sepsis. They packed the seaweed in there, and it had nowhere to go, so it went it went the other way and just ate through all of the bones in my foot.
God.
So I've now got a black foot, and I'm watching my toes, and they're dying one by one. They're going black and going. They rushed me down for surgery. They told my wife I was going to die. My wife had that awful phone call. "You need to come in quick. He's dropping. He's fading fast. You need to come in quick." And she was about 10 miles away, 15 miles away. And she didn't make it in time. And I was rushed down to surgery. And they basically amputated half of my right foot. They took basically if you could think of it like a cup, that was what my foot was. So I could look down where my toes were, and I could see my ankle at the bottom. So it's just hollow. There's some bones in there, but they're not all in the right place. And I've got a tendon that's doing that. But 3 of my toes have gone. I've got 2 toes that don't work. They're just there. And they said, well, let's see how that goes. You know, we think we've got most of it. But if it goes over the knee, Kevin, that's it. You're done, because we can't cut you in half.
Oh my God.
My wife came in after the surgery, and we looked at my foot, which was just horrible. But going up to my shin bone was all black. And they said, right, well, we clearly didn't get all of it. There's still a lot in there. You're down for amputation first thing in the morning. The first amputation of the morning is 9 o'clock. You are down at 9 o'clock. You're going to lose your right leg. And I said, okay, that's fine. Because they said we cannot allow it to go over the knee. And I didn't realize, Shannon, but when they think you're going to die in the hospital, they wake you up every hour to make sure that you're still there. So I'm getting woken up every hour during the night, just to make sure that I'm still breathing, because they really did think that I was not going to make it. And they woke me up at 5 o'clock on the hour, and they said, "Are you still alive?" And I said, "Yes, I'm still here." And they took my blood and tested my blood sugar, blood pressure, all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't go back to sleep. And on the operating table, my heart had given out on the operating table. I kind of died almost on the operating table, and they'd had to bring me back. So they brought me back so I could hear the amputation going on, although my eyes wouldn't open, so I couldn't actually see what was happening, but I could hear it. I thought they were making a Christmas tree, but no, they were actually chopping my foot into little bits to save my life. And about 5:05, I'm thinking, well, I've got 4 hours. Me and my leg have got 4 hours. And I don't feel very well. And I got pains in my chest, Shannon, and I don't like to make a fuss. But I'm really feeling poorly, and I'm looking at the button next to the bed and thinking, should I make a fuss? Should I make a hullabaloo? And it went on for a couple of minutes, and I thought, no, I've really got to do something here. This felt like something was sat on my chest. And I went to reach for the button, and the next thing, I'm flying down a tunnel, feet first. I've got both feet now. Feet first, about warp 7. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and the light is illuminating parts of the tunnel as I go by. It's a bit like a road tunnel on the freeway or the motorway. So I can see bits passing of it. And this is really interesting. That's fascinating. No idea what's going on. Haven't even thought about that. All I know is I'm in a tunnel, Shannon. And I'm going very quickly, feet first, towards this light at the end of the tunnel. No pain. I felt very light. No disorientation. I'm just stimuli. Oh, of course, I'm curious by nature. So I'm trying to take everything in without analyzing what's going on. I get to the light at the end of the tunnel, and I come out into this beautifully lit white room. I've never seen a room like it. It was almost alive. The ceiling, the walls, the floor, glowing with white light. And I'm still not really analyzing what's going on here. Okay, now I'm in a room. Wow, look how bright that is. Even the floor. And I look up, and there's a group of people in front of me, slightly to my right, ahead of me and to the right. And at the head of those group of people is my mother. And my mother was very poorly at the end. I cared for her at the end of her life. And she passed with dementia. And when she passed, there was nothing left of her. She couldn't walk. She couldn't think. She couldn't speak. She couldn't see. She couldn't hear. There was nothing left. Basically, her job was done. That was it. She was 84. She was never going to walk again. She was never going to be, it was not going to be, it just wasn't going to be productive in any way. So she was bedbound and mobile. And now I'm looking at my mother, who had passed at that stage 9 years earlier, sprinting towards me like she's 13 or 14. And I'm taking this in, and now I've got new stimuli. Okay, there's my mother. Hang on, my mother's dead. Hang on, she's running. Hang on, she's talking. I can see her mouth moving. I can hear her voice. I haven't heard her voice in years. Okay, and behind her is my stepfather, her lovely husband, and he's been gone for 13 years. And he's dutifully following along behind. And she reaches me, and I can see her mouth moving, and these words come out like a Gatling gun. And she's telling me about heaven. She's telling me about spirit. She's telling me how wonderful everything is. And she's, oh, you won't believe what's going to happen. Oh, you won't believe what's going to happen. Oh, you won't believe what you're going to see. Oh, the colors. Oh, the animals. Oh, the flowers. Oh, the trees. Oh, the this. Oh, the that. I'm still kind of analyzing what's going on, because I've gone like Data from Star Trek. I can suddenly rationalize very, very quickly. But I'm surrounded by stimuli, and I'm trying to take it all in. I'm wishing I had a camera and a notebook. And slowly it begins to dawn on me what's happening and where I am. And I'm looking at my mother, and she's still going on and on and on and on about this stuff. And I'm thinking, if I died, that's good. Is this what it's like? I've read hundreds of books on near-death experiences, never seen one about a white room. I would have expected to have gone down and come out in a forest, being surrounded by animals, because I love animals, I adore nature. I'm in a white room. It's like I'm in a waiting room at an airport, but the walls were alive. And I'm taking all these stimuli in, this information in. And my mother realizes that I'm not really listening. And also I begin a kind of a self-review. And it's like I've got an internal voice going here, Shannon. Okay, been married at that stage for nearly 30 years, 28 years. Had children, had some interesting work, jobs, seen some stuff, all the spiritual stuff, blah, 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 blah. Okay, tick, tick, tick. And I get down to the creativity. Have I achieved all of my dreams? And then the tick stop, and there's a big cross, big red cross. And I realized that I've been not productive. I've not done 5%, 2% of what I wanted to achieve in life. I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. I'm a musician. I've always been a musician. I could have had careers in both of them, but I've never believed in myself enough to take that final step. Why haven't I done this? Why didn't I do that in 1992? Why did I go over there in 1998? Blah, 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 you idiot, you blah, 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 bleep, bleep, bleep. And I'm getting cross in myself now. And again, my mother says, well, you're not listening to me, perhaps you would listen to him. And I'm thinking, who? There's no one there. And then I realized that in the wall in front of me, there's a door. And the door opens. And this figure walks through, Shannon. Now, I'm not religious. I'm not religious. I've got a fascination. I've studied religion at uni from psychological, sociological, historical perspectives. And I find it interesting why people believe, why people have faith in one thing and maybe not in another. So I'm curious. I'm heavily into psychology and parapsychology and sociology and all that stuff. So I'm interested in things like that. But I've never ascribed even to spiritualism. I'd say I'm more of a universalist. So I'll take bits from different faiths and philosophies and I'll put them into my inner church. But this guy comes through the door. And had I been a Christian, I would have said, oh, hello, Jesus, how are you? Because he looked exactly like Jesus. He had a white robe, a beard, dark hair, amazing eyes, amazing eyes. And he kind of floats towards me. And he's wearing this white shimmering gown of different colors. And he stands there and he begins to talk to me, but his lips aren't moving. It's telepathic. I can hear him in my head, inside my brain or mind or whatever I've got at that point in time. And he says, "Why are you here, Kevin?" And I said, "Well, that's a very good question. I don't know. I don't really know what's going on, because I'm still analyzing, why didn't I do that in 2005? Why have you been so feeble in all these things, you idiots, blah, blah, blah." And he says again, "Why are you here?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I keep getting cross with myself, not anybody else, because I'm surrounded by love, and I'm surrounded by compassion and empathy and all of these things. But I still, it's very insular. Why didn't I do that? Why wasn't I braver? Why wasn't I more courageous? And every time he puts his hand on me, and every time he comes close to me or looks at me or puts his hand on me, my anger or my, goes down. It just goes away. It feels like I can breathe from being underwater. And he can see that I'm working this out in my head. And again, all he says mentally is, "What do you want to do?" And I said, and I listened to my mother, who's done a very good sales job on heaven and the spirit world. Can't wait to go there. But I realized I've not achieved what I should have achieved in life. And I realized that if I go through that door, I'm going to have to come back again very quickly, because I'm going to have to be on a similar pathway, because I've done 5% of what I want to do. I've not engaged with the community enough. I've not helped people enough. Well, maybe I've tried, but maybe I should have done that, and then I can help more people. Why haven't I written a book? Why haven't I written 10 books? Why haven't I produced 30 CDs? Why don't I live in a castle now with all my millions of pounds, dollars? And I'm surrounded by this empathy, and he's given off this wonderful empathy, no judgment, nothing. Love, compassion, and empathy. And I feel surrounded by that, and cocooned by that, and supported and cradled by that loving light. And he says, "What do you want to do, Kevin?" And I said, "I think I need to go back." And he says, "Okay. Are you sure that that's what you want to do?" Oh, I'm tempted to go through that door. Because I know if I go through that door, I'm done. That's it. That's my physical world done. I'm a hospital statistic. They're going to find me in the bed, and they're going to come back at 6 o'clock to wake me up, and they're not going to be able to do it, because I've gone over. No matter what they do, I ain't coming back. And I said, "I need to go back. I need to go back, my friend. I need to go back." My mother's not looking happy. The next thing, Shannon, I wake up in my hospital bed and 15 minutes have passed, maybe, of time. And I feel different. I feel strange. I feel unusual, because that energy, or part of that energy that was in that room, is around me now like a ring donut in my hospital bed. I can feel it there, around my solar plexus. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. But it felt, for the first time, I had hope. But I was still going to have my leg off at 9 o'clock in the morning. But what I also realized, I'd not been well enough. My wife had brought in my laptop, but I'd not been well enough to use it. And at the time, I was working as a distance healer for an online place. And we basically gave out free distance healing all the way around the globe. And we, I was a group leader there, and I had about 20 healers from all over the place, all over the world, and we would have assignments every week. It could be a child in India, it could be somebody in El Salvador, it could be somebody dying of cancer in Canada, And we would just sit and send them out our healing, our love, our prayers, whatever you want to call it. And my wife had gone onto Facebook and quite bluntly, but honestly said, it's not looking good for poor Kev. It's really not. He's in a very poor state of health. And the hospital has said that they're not confident of me surviving too long. So I had probably, with the distance healing group and my friends and people on Facebook, I had probably 1,500 to 2,000 people sending me their love, sending me their prayers, their healing, their light. Agnostics, atheists, Christians, Catholics, Hindus, Sikhs. It didn't matter. Pagans, witches. Really didn't matter. But they were sending their love. And I think that's what I was feeling around in the room. And for the first time, I thought, yeah, it's almost like I heard a voice, everything's going to be okay. And I thought, okay. 9 o'clock came. The surgeon came in who had saved my life, bless him and love him. And he said, he's very straight talking, as I am. And he said, it's 9 o'clock, Kevin, are you ready to go down to have your leg off? And I said, oh, yeah. He said, it has to be done. Sorry, mate, but, there's no other way around it. And he didn't check my foot, but he checked my leg. And he said, He just looked at it and went and shrugged and walked away. I thought, okay, that's a bit strange. And there was a nurse there, and she had not seen my foot. She'd been away. And he said, have a look at his foot. He said, it's the worst injury that we've ever had in here to a foot where the leg has not immediately had to be amputated. He said, you won't see that in life at all. You'll see it in textbooks, but you won't see it in medical books, but you won't see one as bad as that. So she's now unwrapping all the bandages with the red juice and all the stuff. And she takes all that off. And she stood there looking at it like that. And she's got a puzzled look on her face. And I'd seen it. It was like something out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre or like Freddy Krueger. It was vile to look at. Horrible. Something out of a horror film. And I thought, yeah, scary. And she's looking at it, and she called the doctor over and said, you need to come and see this. And he said, oh, I did the surgery. I've seen it before. Eventually, she gets quite agitated with him, and he reluctantly, begrudgingly comes over to look at it. And he looks at it and he swears. And I'm thinking, well, that's different. That's not something you kind of, are prone to hearing. And he said, what's happened here? And I thought, well, I don't know. I'm at this end. It's there. You tell me. You're the one with a PhD. And he said, you need to look at this, Kevin. And I looked at it, Shannon. I could have got my dinner off it. It was pink. Pink as a baby's bum. All trace of sepsis had gone. It disappeared. It had gone from my foot, from my leg. Everything was perfect. I still had obviously the hole in the where they'd had to go in and take out bones that were riddled with the sepsis, but the sepsis had gone. It just disappeared. And he said, "Well, how's that happened? Because it was there last night. I saw it. It was black up to your shin, wasn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it was." He said, "Where's it gone?" I thought, well, I've got an idea, but I'm not going to tell you. Yeah. And then they said, well, your foot's hollow, so it's not going to, you need plastic surgery. We need to fill that with plastic because it's not going to heal. So you'll be in hospital for maybe a couple of months. Well, because you can't walk, you can't recuperate, so this is going to take time. And they said it's just not going to heal. And then 2 weeks later, it started healing. It started to fill up with matter. And they said, well, how can that happen? There's nothing to knit it together. Where's that matter coming from? It's just appeared. And I said, well, I don't know. I'm not medically trained. And they said, well, it's still going to take, maybe years and you'll still need the plastic surgery. If my foot filled up completely inside 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, um, and they couldn't understand it. They couldn't understand it. In total, I was in hospital, Shannon, for I think a month and a day or something silly like that. And the only one who understood me was the hospital chaplain who came round. And she said, "Are you religious?" And I said, "No." She said, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yep." And she was a trained medic and she'd seen my notes. And she said, "Well, you shouldn't be alive." And I said, "Yeah, that's what I've been told." And she said, "You shouldn't have that many legs as you have now." And I said, "No, I know. I've been told that as well." And she said, "Can we talk about this?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "You're not religious?" I said, "No." She said, "Can we talk about the unconditional power of God's divine love?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely. Yeah." And so we sat and we prayed for an hour. We held hands. We talked about, I didn't tell her about the near-death experience. I thought I might have been pushing it a bit. But we talked about the power of God's love and God's healing power and how powerful that is. And she said, "You're living proof. You shouldn't be here. That sepsis was enough to, to kill you, and came that close to killing you." But she said, "I've read your notes. They don't make any sense. It doesn't make physical sense." But she said, "I can understand it from a faith perspective. Can you?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely, I can." And that was 7 years ago. Yes, 7 years ago. I've had a few little issues with it. They should have took off more the original surgery. I've got to go in and have tiny little bit more amputation done, because the bones in my foot after 7 years are starting to collapse. So I've got to go in and have them polished, shone up, and a couple of them need replacing or to be put into the right place. And they're going to take off my 2 toes, which don't do anything, which should help my balance. So I still have health issues with it. I still have to go to the podiatrist once a month. But basically, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. And it's it stayed with me, and I don't remember my dreams, but I remember every second of that from 2018. Yeah.
Well, there goes your tap dancing career. But
I would if I could.
I know. Thank you for sharing that. Oh man, that resonates on so many different levels, and it's incredible, and yet it is completely credible. And I appreciate you taking the time to share all of that.
No
Uh,
worries.
as just sort of in summation, because I know we could talk about this stuff for hours. Um, since you already were a spiritualist, you already are a medium and a psychic and a healer and a reader. Was there anything that changed after that for you in terms of your perspective on what we're doing here, the universe, your purpose, spiritual matters, or was it just added? Was it just sort of an enhancement to what you already knew? Is there anything different?
Massive, yeah, a massive enhancement. I changed. Um, I struggle with my mental health. So I have good days, bad days. But over the course of the 8 years, sorry, the 7 years, a lot has changed. I'm a different person. I've altered.
Yeah.
I put all my writing together, and I'm just about to release that. Is my first book. I'm
Oh,
working on 2 other books. I'm working on no, 3 other books actually. I've gone back into my music recently that I haven't touched for 10, 15 years.
good.
I wanted to help the community, Shannon. I I decided to qualify officially as a meditation teacher.
Nice.
I did that, and that's what I do a lot of now, and I do that for free in the community. And I work with people who Um, you know, from all walks of life, really, people who need help with balancing, maybe mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Um, People who just want to find quiet times in their week. Um, I think part of that also is I want to take that feeling that I had in that white room, that divine power, and recreate it. I trained and qualified in sound therapy and music therapy, which I now incorporate into the meditation. Um, and we do online, and we do a public one here once a week. I love doing that. I enjoy doing that. Has taught me so much about trying to recreate that sense of peace and power, and trying in some weird way to I guess to replicate that in meditation form. So it's almost like I want to show people that same energy that I've experienced during my NDE. And even if it's just a tiny little fraction of that, maybe taking them to a wonderful forest clearing where we can, I can then surround them with the wonders of nature, that connection with nature. Because in that room, I felt connected to the universe. I felt connected to everything. So if I can teach people to connect to animals, plants, the whole of nature, that universal connection, that universal power, to connect to other people, because everyone is our brother, everyone is our sister. So to feel that empathy, that wonderful divine connection that I felt. So part of it was that. Um, I'm about to currently work. I volunteer with 4 charities now, some with my wife as well. 3 of those are supporting young children, especially neurodivergent children, because I'm neurodivergent myself. And again, giving something back, and maybe helping kids who are going through their teenage years so they don't go through aspects that I went through during my teenage years, which were very confusing. And we're about to start work as holistic practitioners in a local hospice as well. So I want to do more of that, Shannon. I would love to do more of that work, because I feel I can't really drive at the moment, so I can't, and I don't really want to do the mediumship, but this is me being of service
Yeah.
in my own little way, and my wife as well. And our health isn't great at the moment. We have various health issues, but yeah, for me, lying in that hospital bed for just over a month and staring at the same bit of wall, what what can I do? How can I change my life? How can I rectify what I felt in that room when I was beating myself up? I haven't been good enough. I haven't been brave enough. I haven't been confident enough, assured enough. I haven't been of service enough. Yes, I've done stuff, but I could have done more stuff, and then more stuff on top of that. So I think a part of that is also I don't care so much now. I don't make excuses for not doing stuff. The focus now is on, okay, how can I make a difference? How can I do this? I'm much more interactive with people than I was before. I used to be quite shy and reticent. That's gone out the window now. If I can start up conversations with people in cafes, that's exactly what I do. I'm fascinated by people. I want to know about their life. I want to know about their this, their that. I'm more assured and confident in myself, but it's about very much like what we were saying earlier with the mediumship, or the healing, or the whatever. It's about being of service. It's about trying to make a small difference. And if that helps one person, again, going back to that mantra, but if we can help one person, job done. I'm never going to change life on a global scale. I'm never going to be a king or a president or a prime minister or anything like that. I'm never going to be able to do that. But so I don't focus on the global. I focus on the local and the local community. So which bits of the community can we help? Where can we go and give our time? Where can we go and do this? Where can we go and do that? And for me, that's now become the mantra. And I'd never seen myself doing that. I wouldn't have done that before the NDE, Shannon. I wouldn't have had the confidence to. Who wants to listen to me? And now here I am counseling kids and teenagers and helping them to read and helping them to get through some tricky stuff in life. That I've been, and also empathizing because maybe I've been through that myself in my kind of childhood. So I think that's the difference. I feel more of use now. There's still a lot more to do, and I want to live to 150 to get half of it
Me
done.
too. Me too.
But at the end of the day, I think all you can do is your best. And as I say, some days if my health is not great, I just rest and I just look after myself, which I also didn't do before. So for me now, life has become more active, but also with the meditation, more balanced and grounded,
Mhm.
more analytical and logical. So yeah, the future's looking interesting.
Yeah.
There's always doors opening, but it is that positive mind, I think, very much the same as it sounds with yourself. It's being positive and creating scenarios, creating opportunities in life. So, yeah,
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 I won't go on and on, but I so relate with that. I think I don't know if you have ADHD also, but I want to
yes,
do all the things. And the thing is like when you said I realized on the other side or whatever you call it that I wasn't doing enough and
no,
that's not
no,
a judgment from God or Jesus or the world. That's
no,
something we
no,
put
no,
on
no,
ourselves, right? That we have this bubbling energy, both you and I, which I
yeah,
recognized right off the bat that we're
yeah,
kindred spirits in the way that we
very much,
operate
yes, yeah,
in the
yeah,
world. And I've always been that like, I want to do all the things. And I'm faced now with, I might have to get a day job, but I can feel spirit saying, no, it's more podcast. Cause I'm like, okay, but then there's like life stuff, which is your bills are really
oh,
high. And then
oh, yes,
also,
oh,
I'm like,
yes,
but I know I'm meant to be a writer, a speaker, a medium, podcast host for the sake of what we're
right,
doing here, which is a
yeah,
motivational speaker. I want to help people. And I keep hearing spirit say, stay the course because
mm.
voiceover isn't what it used to be. But I'm like,
Oh, I've tried to get into voiceover work.
yeah,
So, yeah, yeah, I
now
seriously
yeah,
considered
it's like
that.
20 years ago, that was the time and I was in it. And,
Yeah, I
I'm
wish
like,
I'd done it.
I
Yeah.
know. And now it's like, I know that it's all these things where I'm like, okay, I guess I got to get a day job, but spirit keeps telling me,
No,
no, you're going to make this
no.
happen. And it's because I know the way you do what my purpose is and what I need to do. And so
Mm.
what I'm doing is more podcasting, more writing,
Good.
more mediumship if
I want to do
possible.
exactly the same as you. I have the same goals.
Oh,
We have, I started up, after the NDA, I started up a Facebook group called Life Beyond Life.
oh, great.
And the purpose of Life Beyond Life really is to predominantly, I mean, we cover everything that's metaphysical, parapsychological, spiritual, but it was to give historical context proof um, of um, experiences that people had had. So I would sit and write them up. I'm especially fascinated by experiences that happened in the Victorian era because they were very heavily documented. But they were documented in such a way as they sound like Sherlock Holmes novels because everything is looked at from almost like a police case. So we have to have evidence over here, and we have to have witnesses over here, and everything has to be analysed and gone into because we want to know the truth of the situation. Because the first parapsychologists were literally psychologists, and they want to know what's the purpose here, what's the truth. So I'm fascinated by those, and I've got books here with thousands of cases. So I tend to type those up and put them in and say, hey, in 1870 this happened, 1963 this guy went over there and this happened, and we talk about near-death experiences, and we talk about out-of-body experiences, we talk about mediumship, anything that fits into the parapsychological kind of menu, which is pretty much everything of a spiritual nature. So psychic, psychokinetic, and then evidence of life beyond, they call it post-mortem survival. So basically evidence of life beyond this physical world, which covers a lot of ground: after death communications, electronic voice phenomena, mediumship, psychic. this, that, and
Yeah.
the other, healing. There's so many things that tick the boxes. So yeah, we tend to focus on that in life beyond life, and in sharing. And we started a meditation group up on there, on Zoom. And again, it's just about educating people,
Hmm.
making people more aware, giving the alternative argument side to the cynical side or the scientific side, looking at both sides of the argument, maybe, but trying to get to the truth of the matter. And I don't think we'll ever get ultimate, definitive proof. But to me, everything that I've ever had in my life has been evidence. This is evidence that something, and to get through my skeptical brain, it's got to go some, because I am going to analyze that
Me
hell out of it.
too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's not going to get an easy pass. So if it gets past that, my brain waves the white flag and says, "I'm done." Okay, there is no physical source for that, whether that's paranormal or spiritual or past communications or whatever. Then but I've been blessed to have probably dozens, if not hundreds, of these happen in my lifetime. So
Yeah.
I feel very honored and very blessed to have that. And each one of those to me is evidence. This doesn't fit into our known physical concept of the physical world. It doesn't tie in with physics as we understand it. It might be metaphysical, but it doesn't tie in. So there must be something else. There must be something else beyond science as we know it within its borders. There must be something else beyond that. And that curiosity goes back to me being a 7-year-old, very scared 7-year-old, under the bedclothes, under multiple layers, wondering what the heck is going on, and then going to the library with my wheelbarrow or whatever, and coming back with 100 books on paranormal things, and wanting to know what it is. Opinions, one thing, and everything else. But I've got that knowing. I'm on the spectrum. I'm autistic, and I've got ADHD. So I'm highly analytical, and I want to know what things are. I'm not interested in, oh, well, I think it might. No, 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 no. I want to know. So I will go and find out. And if if I don't agree with something, I will put it to the test. The same with numerology. First time I heard of numerology, I thought it was the most stupid thing I'd ever heard in my life. And my friend said, well, put it to the test then. And I did. And I've been studying it for 35 years now.
Mhm.
It's the same with electronic voice phenomena. I've been doing that for 30 years. But the first time this is nonsense. Voices come out of thin air. How does that,
Yeah.
that's not logical. Isaac Newton would laugh at that, that's stupid. And then I put it to the test and I got evidence back that there's something there,
Yeah.
because voices can't come out of thin air, but they can. Because I've
And
got
rats
evidence.
can't dance and whistle and stomp around. But yeah, Kevin, it is so amazing to connect with you, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. I really do feel like
Absolutely, my love.
we are so
Absolutely.
on the wavelength. And I too, when I was little, the doctors thought I might be autistic. It turns out I'm just a highly sensitive person and an empath and ADHD. And
Oh,
so it's
they're superpowers.
there's
They
I
are
do
superpowers.
not think they're
That's right.
disorders. I think that we are
I
it
don't
is
call them disorder. I call them
nope.
condition. I call them conditions. I see them as superpowers. My brain works
Oh, yeah, me too.
very quick and
Yep,
very
mine too.
different to most people. And I love that. I'm
Oh, me
fascinated by
too.
facts, knowledge, education, information. I
And the
hate ignorance.
curiosity we have.
I think that's the thing. That's
Yeah.
the fuel in our cars, or that is it. It's the curiosity. Why is that like that? But it involves, you need to have a skeptical brain in order to ask those questions, because most people just accept it. This is why misinformation spreads on the internet, because people just say, oh, well, that must be true, it's on the internet. But we would analyze, well, hang on a minute, let's just look into this a little bit deeper. And that's what a true skeptic is. It's not somebody who poo-poos or says, oh, that can't happen, that's a cynic. But a true skeptic will always say, show me.
Yeah.
I want to see why that is that way, or why it's not that way, or what
I'm the
could be.
I'm the
And
same way.
very much like Sherlock Holmes, one of my ultimate literary heroes, we just analyze anything, even Data for Star Trek, would analyze it because we want to know the truth of the situation. We want to know that life goes on beyond this physical world. Um, I've been blessed to have a near-death experience, but if we were to sit down and write down everything that we've ever experienced, if our memories allowed us to, we'd probably end up with toilet roll after toilet roll after toilet roll of data, of evidence. Well, this happened to me and I can't explain it. And then that happened to me and I can't explain that one either. And then and then you've got third-party information. Like I'm researching in Victorian times, going back to the 1870s, 1880s, where I've got thousands and thousands of anecdotal things where people have, had really weird stuff happen.
Yeah.
And once you go through all the books, even the books in my bookcase, we're probably getting close to 1 million people. It goes into the millions. It must over time. There has to be something. It can't just all be just figments of our imagination. It can't all be hallucinations. It can't all be that. And I think there's a lot of work to do in that. And from the medical profession regarding near-death experiences, which started in the 70s, thank goodness. And there needs to be a lot more research done on elements such as electronic voice phenomena, mediumship, ghosts, all of these things, because the evidence for it, I think, is overwhelming.
Me too.
Is it proof? No, but it's
Yeah.
evidence. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
exactly.
And all we need is one, Shannon. We need one. We need one account of a ghost story to be true, and ghosts exist. We need one account of a near-death experience, just one from the millions, or even the tens of millions. Let's go that high. We need one. That's all we need. And I think that's sometimes why cynics are very defensive, because they know that if we just get one, we can say, well, that happened. That person did go and have a near-death experience. That mediumship that was given did come from a higher source
Yeah.
that we can't see, and it came from a different dimension that we can't see. But there is such a thing as mediumship. There are such things as ghosts. There are such things as near-death experiences. There is such a place as the spirit world, our spirit team, guides, heaven, whatever you want to call them. Labels are labels. But life does not stop at this physical point when we breathe our last and our hearts go back. We go on to another dimension. We go on and we continue to learn. We continue to exist. And all our loved ones, our pets, every life form goes on. And if we can teach the world that, I think the world would change pretty much overnight. People would lose the fear of death. They would lose the ignorance. And ignorance is often the cause of many horrible things in this world. But I think the world would change very, very quickly. People would have more understanding of who they are as spiritual beings and not just as physical life forms.
Amen. You just said it. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time.
You're so
Can't
welcome.
wait to be in touch with you and just continue to talk about these things and share what we feel and what we know, and to create more communities around this topic. So, oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
what a great uh, uh, um,
Quest.
use of time is the word of our time doing this. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate it very much, Kevin Milsom. And how do we get in touch
Thank
with
you.
you? I know we'll have a link below. If is there, how do we reach out to you? Is it the Facebook group? Is it
You can find me on Facebook, Kevin J. Milsom. You can Life Beyond Life um, is a group focused on, as I say, education and understanding of spirituality, metaphysics. I also run a group that I've run for 15 years or so, called Spiritus, and that's like a good news channel. To me, Shannon, being uplifting is so important in
yeah,
life, and it's just I put up things in. It's called Spiritus Post Upliftment and Positivity, and I put news stories from around the world in there every day that are just uplifting, because the news, I can't even look at the news at the
uh,
moment. It scares
I
the
I can't
hell out of me.
either.
So I put things in Look at this person, they've done a wonderful thing. Look at these animals, aren't they amazing? Look at this, isn't it fascinating? So it's more of an upliftment thing, but the life beyond life, yes, is all about everything to do with spirituality, spiritualism, life beyond this planet, um, anything that's metaphysical, anything that allows people to have a better understanding and a better knowledge. And it's a place to come and share. And we learn from each other. Like, I would learn from you, you learn from me, we learn from each other, and that's how we grow. And I
Yeah.
find that absolutely fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting. I'm now keen to hear your story.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I
There's
get a
so
YouTube
much. I
channel going,
know.
I'm going to interview you. I'm
Please
coming
do.
for you.
Thank you again. We'll talk really
You're so
soon,
welcome,
Kevin.
my lovely.
This has been amazing.